I want to ask you about the show, Dead Boy Detectives. I've watched it a few times because I love it so much. And for me, I mean, the episode you directed and George's performance in the show in general is, I think, what has hooked me so much. Because, I've seen Netflix has a lot of, like, on the surface, I thought, oh, I've seen a show like this on Netflix before. They're notoriously canceled, especially if they're gay. And then I watched it and I said, why is this connecting with me so much? And honestly, your episode and George to me are just like top notch. And I was watching a little more of it last night and I thought I wanted to ask you about the challenges of, like, because I know with Heartstopper, for example, it had one director and they would film like the school scenes or they'd film this scene or that
Right.
scene. But I assume, because you all had multiple directors, and I could be wrong, that you filmed episodically in order, maybe?
Correct. Correct.
Yours is near the end. So there's this established tone. There is, it's mostly I mean, yeah, there are standalone episodes, but it's also an overarching kind of like, I guess, Supernatural, the X-Files, those kind of shows. What is it like? What are the challenges, and how do you maintain how do you maintain the tone? I know that your cinematographer had shot a few different episodes, so I
Right.
would like to hear about that, like the challenges and like maybe like the what makes it easier. Did you, in working with, I assume Steve Yockey, I assume
Yeah.
you closely with him. So I'd love to hear about that. That if that
Yeah,
makes
for sure. So Steve Yockey, so I got involved with the show just so you know, because Steve Yockey came from Supernatural. Like, so when he was a writer in Supernatural, so when I started directing Supernatural, I ended up just by random luck directing 3 or 4 episodes that he wrote. So we developed a rapport and an appreciation for each other's skill sets back then. So it was really cool when he ascended to the big boss position that he called me and had me be a part of the series and put me in to direct his episode, which was, really cool. When you're directing TV, you are picking up somebody else's baton and
right.
running with it because the tone has been set. In this case, it was set by Toland Krieger, who is the pilot director. So
Right.
your lens package is preordained and the color palette is preordained and there's the overreaching style is preordained in so much as this show was very symmetrical and like to use close wide lenses and things like that. Well, the good news is I love that style, so I was like, oh man, this is very Wes Anderson, very my vibe. I love this. I'm not forced into extreme close-ups like a CW show. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So I connected with what they were doing, and they showed me. I got to see what they were doing even though the shows weren't out, and they weren't even necessarily done. But I shown the pilot, I was shown uh, episodes as they were sort of assembled. So that so I was given those examples of the show, so I knew overall what the tone was and the sensibilities were. And it's also on the page. You can kind of see like the snappy British dialogue and the things like that. And so it wasn't that hard. That's part of the gig when you're an episodic director. I always say it's a little bit like being a substitute teacher. You're coming into somebody else's classroom, and your job is just to be sure the kids learn how to multiply that one equation before you leave. Um, and by the way, have them not hate you in the process is also a
Right.
nice way to go. So snapping into tone wasn't hard because the tone was very clear in the pilot and very clear in the episodes that I saw, but especially the pilot. Toland Krieger, one of the best pilot directors out there, and what he did was very, very specific. And I'm like, great, I can follow that. I can step into that, and my brain can think like that. And then, once you've accepted that, then it is creatively yours. Then it's up to you to go, how do I tell this story? How am I gonna, what does this mean to me? How am I gonna, is this gonna be, handheld maybe for a couple of things? Am I, because there's a template, but the template only is a template for scenes where the template makes sense. If that makes sense, you don't just stick with a template. Close and wide doesn't work if you're trying to keep intense energy into something. So you got to go, nah, I'm not doing that. So I came up with my own shot plan for a lot of stuff, my own style for a lot of things, because I was shooting in hell. That was not an established template. There was like, that's different. All gloves are off there. So I used all kinds of tricks that I wanted to use there to create a different sort of vibe through that space. And so, once I had absorbed what they were doing, then I had free reign to be creative and tell the story the way I felt like it needed to be told. And Steve was there. So if I was going too far off the reservation, Steve would be like, but that really never really happened. I mean, I would come in with my plan and I would start my plan. I'd watch the scene. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And Steve, an incredibly smart and creative man, also incredibly supportive. So 99.9% of the time, he'd see what I was doing and go, great, man, if that's what you think it is, then that's what it is. And then occasionally he'd throw in comments about like maybe XYZ or try this or be sure you get that. But I understood the material pretty well. So I didn't, I had a handle on it. And once I cleared a thing or two with him, then we were good.